Ultraman Rising. This movie is directed by Shannon Tyndall and John Aoshima. It's written by Shannon Tyndall and Mark Himes. Sorry if I butchered those names. I would say the latest superhero movie of 2024. This film came out in, I believe, June 14th. Ultraman is this Japanese superhero who turns huge, kind of like Ant-Man in Civil War. He turns huge to fight these kaijus. You know those from, what was it, Pacific Rim? Those monsters, they're back and more animated than ever. In this film, the latest to hold the mantle of Ultraman is Ken Sato. He's actually this professional baseball player. He plays for the Japanese team, and as his side gig, he is Ultraman. This guy can bat, he can punch, and in this particular film, he helps raise a kaiju baby. That sounded awkward. It's because it kind of is. All right, so let me just talk about what the clear highlight of this film is, and that's the animation. I'm surprised this one didn't make it to theaters. I think it would have been amazing to see because of the scaling in the animation and how well animated it is. It mixes 3D and 2D elements, and in particular, the action scenes are so magnificent to watch. The action scenes are very cinematic, and I'm a huge, huge fan of the framing composition because, whoa, it's very impressive. There's actually a particular shot, one of my favorites in the whole movie, where Ken Sato gets up to bat, two strikes, one left. He switches his batting position to his weaker arm, but, he's just that good. And in this moment, the camera's behind Ken Sato. He's on the left side. Well, you're right, my left. We just kind of see as a huge meteorite hits and scrapes against the baseball stadium because it has shields, right? Because these guys are used to kaiju attacks. They have shields everywhere protecting them from everything. As it scrapes across the baseball stadium, the camera just follows that, and then eventually it hits the city. Boom. And then the kaiju appears out of nowhere, just creating this great effect of scale. The audience looks so tiny. Ken Sato's at the left of the frame, and his opponent looks majestic. Great monster design, I have to say. Ken Sato is not your ordinary hero. This guy's cocky, he's confident. In a world where we see superheroes come from day one, where they have to learn their moves, they have to learn how to be a superhero, this guy's been one for a while, and that's where we show up. So when a monster appears, he doesn't hesitate at all. What I like about him is a monster will show up and he just sprints towards it. He sprints towards the problem. He's ready for the fight 24/7. I really did like that about him. I don't think there was a single moment in the movie where he stopped himself or he thought about his own safety. He just always went like, no, there's a problem, I'll go deal with it. I really like that about him. And I just like that as a hero, he's really gray. He's selfish, he deflects a lot, and he uses a lot of character work. I really like that about him. One of my favorite scenes is actually when he has an interview with a reporter. It's about a 5-minute scene. It's earlier on in the film, and she asks him a question about when he was a kid and he was picked on, he was bullied. And he responded with, yeah, the reason why I have such a big personality is to give the kids something else to talk about. I just found it really interesting that he would create his own distractions for others to not pay attention to something that's vulnerable to him. I thought he was a really interesting protagonist, not one dimensional at all. I believe that if the film had stuck with this story where Ken Sato has to balance being a pro baseball player, being Ultraman, fighting these kaijus, and reconciling with his father, which is a big part of the story, I think it would have been a stronger film. But then this awkward story choice comes along where he has to raise a baby kaiju. Why? The film explains why, but to an unsatisfying amount. It's very minimal. In a sense, it's to understand a parent's perspective, where he could never do that unless he had something to raise himself. And I think it would have just been smarter to give him like a real human daughter or son to look after while doing all of this. I think it would have just hit home also. Like, you could do so much with it. Not only that, but the film doesn't do a good job at showcasing Ultraman fighting kaijus and then Ultraman raising a baby and the connection here. Like, how did we get here? I never understood why the sympathy for the enemy when the film never gives you a reason to have that feeling. Obviously, there are films that give you a great reason to, but this one just felt pushed on me. Another weakness from the film would have to be the sound mixing, man. Some of the sound effects are so underwhelming. Like when Kensato gets up to bat and he hits the ball, it felt like such a soft hit. Or even when he punches a kaiju, I don't feel the punch, and I wish I did. Also, towards the end of the film, there's actually a moment where the sound clipped for me. I don't think that's ever happened before to me. Other than those moments, the sound mixing was normal. It was decent. Also, there's a main character in here that dies but then doesn't, and it was just such a cheap death. This type of writing is lazy to me. I think it's just reaching for reaction. And then whenever that happens, it just kind of discredits any scenes that came from that. The editing was choppy at times. It felt like the pacing was too fast or too slow in some moments, and the transitioning between scenes could have used a lot more work. It seemed like the scenes lasted longer, and in terms of pacing, there was, for example, a moment where up to this point in the film, we're about two-thirds now, his team had lost about 6 games. And then within the next 30 seconds to a minute, you're told that his team has climbed up to second place in the table. And it's not shown, it's told by some reporter or something. And you're like, what? Overall, this was a very surprising film. I did not expect anything from it, and it very much surprised me. The animation really took off, man. It really did. I do recommend you watch it just for the animation, especially if you're a fan of it. This is much better than Kung Fu Panda 4. I would be lying if I said I was not entertained at times. This movie's got an interesting protagonist. He's clearly got flaws, but working on them. And the action scenes are pretty great. And its intentions and I thought message was good. You know, a big part of it is him reconciling with the relationship he had with his father, which I think is a strong point in itself, but I think it just trips over its own ambitiousness. Some very entertaining moments. I will give this film a B minus. This movie is rated PG, guys. You can find it on Netflix. Obviously, there's a lot of fight scenes with kaijus. These are monsters. And spoiler warning, you can click off if you want. So at the very end of the film, the villain does commit suicide. And, you know, I think the smaller children won't really pick up on that, but the older ones would. So just a heads up on that. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought about Ultraman Rising. Everyone's watching Inside Out. We're watching Ultraman. Come on. Let me know what you thought about this film. Let me know what you thought about the review. Catch you guys soon. Bye bye.